Have you ever wondered what actually occurs inside the human brain during those final moments when a person is about to pass away? It's a question that not only puzzles scientists, but also sparks deep curiosity in all of us. Everyone seems to want to know whether that moment between life and death is truly miraculous or unimaginably dark. In 2002, a group of researchers published a remarkable study in the journal Frontiers in Neuroscience. They observed brain activity in patients standing at the threshold between life and death. What they found was astonishing. During the 30 seconds before the heart stopped beating and blood ceased to flow to the brain waves continued functioning intensely. In fact, the waves displayed a level of intensity similar to what's seen when someone is engaged in high-level cognitive functions like remembering, focusing, or recalling deep memories. This discovery altered the way many people perceive the final moments of life. Instead of thinking that death means the abrupt end of all conscious activity, scientists began to hypothesize that, perhaps, the brain may actually be working at peak performance in that moment. Some suggest this is the time when a person's entire life flashes before their eyes, like a short film. In just a few seconds, past images and memories, both joyful and painful, might surge into the subconscious. Many individuals who've had near-death experiences have described a sensation of witnessing every detail of their lives replay in front of them. They recall seeing everything that had ever happened to them, from childhood through to that final moment, as though reliving it all in their mind. This has only deepened the interest of both scientists and the public in the mysteries of the human brain at the boundary between life and death. One of the leading researchers in this field is Dr. Jimo Borjigin and her team at the University of Michigan. They recorded strange electrical signals in the brains of dying patients. Yet, no one has been able to precisely explain what the brain is experiencing at that exact moment. The electrical patterns captured were merely unusual waves on a computer screen. The actual content the brain was processing remains beyond the reach of modern science. So, even today, all we truly know is that during those final moments before death, the human brain continues to function in a unique and powerful way. It does not simply shut down, it seems to engage in mysterious and intense processes we can barely imagine. If you've ever heard accounts of people returning from the edge of death, the name George Ritchie likely gives you pause for reflection. In 1963, the well-known American magazine Guideposts drew public attention with a series of articles recounting the astonishing, real-life near-death experience of a young soldier. That story not only transformed George Ritchie's life, but also raised profound questions about what happens after we die. In December 1943, during the height of World War II, 20-year-old George Ritchie had just donned the uniform of the U.S. Army. He was in training at Buckley Camp in Texas, along with thousands of other young men carrying the hopes and dreams of wartime America. Although Ritchie had a background as a Boy Scout, his greatest aspiration was not to fight on the battlefield, but to become a military doctor, someone who could heal both the physical injuries and the inner wounds of his fellow soldiers. But it seemed destiny had planned something entirely different for him. Just as his training was nearing completion, George Ritchie suddenly fell critically ill with what turned out to be severe pneumonia. During those cold winter days, his condition worsened day by day. He lost consciousness at the camp and was rushed to a nearby military hospital. There, the attending doctor confirmed that his heart had stopped beating and covered his body with a white sheet to prepare for transfer to the morgue. But something miraculous happened. Just about 9 minutes later, as the medical staff prepared to move his body, George Ritchie suddenly moved and came back to life in excruciating pain, marking one of the rare and miraculous resuscitations ever recorded at that time. Later, when recounting his story, George Ritchie described what he experienced in that exact moment when everyone else believed he was dead. As soon as he realized he was no longer lying in his hospital bed, George still felt that he existed, but not in a physical body. He could stand up, move around the room at incredible speed, and could even pass through all objects. He saw himself walking into the hallway, seeing doctors, nurses, and other soldiers. But strangely, no one noticed his presence, and no one responded to his calls. Fear and loneliness overwhelmed him as he gradually realized that he might be alone in this world. On his journey to find a way out of that state, George Ritchie continued to wander through the camp and the city, and even flew to places he had never known. At times, he found himself standing in a crowded bar, where the living were laughing and drinking, completely unaware that countless spirits were clinging to them. In that shadowy world, for the first time, George deeply felt what he called attachment, or the souls who could not let go of the earthly world and therefore could not continue their journey. George's fear reached its peak when suddenly everything around him lit up. A radiant being, emitting a powerful light, appeared before him. George described it as a luminous figure overflowing with love and compassion, communicating with him through telepathy without the need for words. Standing in front of this light, George felt that every fault and every weakness of his was illuminated, but he was not judged. He received only absolute understanding and forgiveness. It was at that moment that George experienced what science calls a life review. His entire life, from childhood to the smallest memories, played out before him like a vivid movie. What was remarkable was that while witnessing every major and minor event of his life, George did not just see his actions. He also felt the emotions and thoughts of the people who had been connected to him. It was a gentle yet profound judgment, making him feel both ashamed and grateful for having been given the chance to look back at himself. After that experience, the luminous being led George even further. He was guided through many levels of the world after death. There were places filled only with lost souls, trapped in anger and unable to free themselves. There were also radiant cities of light with vast halls where spirits gathered to study knowledge and read immense books containing all the wisdom of humanity. George even witnessed angels, advanced spiritual communities that he described as centers of thought, places where all beings lived in harmony and were filled with light. Each place he passed through brought him different emotions, from horror to admiration, from despair to hope. Then, when George began to feel a strange sense of peace, the luminous being told him that he could not die yet because he still had a mission to fulfill in the earthly world. Instantly, everything around him vanished. Pain and heaviness pulled him back into his body on the hospital bed. He had just returned to life in a way that no one could have imagined. George Ritchie's near-death experience later became a source of inspiration for millions around the world, helping people reconsider the true value of life, of love, and of the miracles that sometimes only reveal themselves at the most fragile boundary between life and death. Music. The miracle of returning to life not only brought George Ritchie back from the very edge of death, but it also opened an entirely new chapter in his life. After that mysterious return, Ritchie's health gradually recovered, and he ultimately fulfilled his greatest dream of becoming an army doctor. Beyond that, his later life was marked by many achievements in Virginia, where he was not only a respected physician, but also served as president of the city's medical society. However, what made George Ritchie's name and influence endure was not only his solid medical career or his admirable social standing, but also the story he so bravely shared with the world. It was that near-death experience which profoundly changed the way he viewed life, death, and the true meaning of compassion. After many years of reflection and contemplation, Ritchie decided to write down his entire extraordinary experience in the book Return from Tomorrow. No one could have expected that, upon its publication, this small book would become a phenomenon across the United States. The simple, unpretentious writing, yet imbued with immense spiritual power, touched the hearts of millions of readers. The near-death experience left in George Ritchie a fundamental change in thinking and in action. Before, he lived like so many other young people, always striving for a career and hoping to achieve great accomplishments. But after returning from the realm of death, he understood that the true value of life does not lie in fame or status, but in those moments when we know how to help and bring love to others. Many patients who were treated by him have recalled that George Ritchie always listened to them with his whole heart and was willing to help the poor without expecting anything in return. For him, saving a life was simply the continuation of the gift he had received in the past. The stories of kindness, compassion, and optimism that he passed on not only affected his patients, but also inspired colleagues, friends, and countless generations of readers around the world. Even though modern medicine has achieved remarkable advances in saving human lives, there are still moments when science must pause before the mysterious boundary between life and death. Near-death experiences, although they have appeared in the medical literature and spiritual beliefs of humanity for thousands of years, were only seriously studied by leading scientists beginning in the second half of the 20th century. In recent decades, with the support of modern technology, neuroscientists such as Dr. Jimo Borjigin have been able to record and analyze brain wave signals right at the moment between life and death. A study published in the journal Frontiers in Neuroscience in 2002 revealed that during the last 30 seconds before the heart stops pumping blood to the brain, certain types of brain waves suddenly become highly active, almost identical to the state of the brain when a person is in deep concentration. However, all that medicine has gathered so far only stops at electroencephalogram charts. No one has been able to truly decipher what images or experiences lie within those signals. Stepping beyond the field of neuroscience, one of the pioneers who paved the way for the study of near-death experiences is Dr. Raymond Moody. He is known as the father of near-death experience research, and his book Afterlife, published in 1975, created a worldwide revolution in awareness. For many years, Raymond Moody interviewed thousands of patients who had experienced clinical death, and he was the one who coined the term near-death experience, which is now widely recognized. The results collected from those interviews showed something extraordinary. Across all cultures, people recounted experiences with astonishing similarities. Many described the sensation of separating from the body, being able to clearly see the resuscitation process, and even witnessing their own body lying on the hospital bed. Some cases even remembered every word spoken by the doctors and every small action, which they later recounted with such precision that it amazed the medical staff. Even so, from the perspective of modern science, all these phenomena remain a gray area full of debate. Medicine can record biological signals. It can listen to patients' stories, but it still has no convincing explanation for how consciousness might exist outside the physical body. Scientists like Jimo Borjigin and Raymond Moody both admit that modern science is only taking its first steps on the long journey to unravel the mysteries at the boundary between life and death. For this reason, the near-death experience continues to be an inspiration not only for researchers, but also for countless people who are searching for the answer to the greatest question of human existence. What truly awaits us on the other side of the boundary between life and death? Alongside modern scientific research, the question of the soul after death has long been a central topic for many schools of religion and philosophy. One of the most influential figures in the West to discuss this subject is Emanuel Swedenborg, the distinguished Swedish scientist, philosopher, and theologian of the 18th century. Not only was he a polymath, but Swedenborg was also known for his visionary and intuitive experiences regarding the afterlife, which led him to dedicate his final years to its study. In his famous work Heaven and Hell, Swedenborg introduced the concept of an intermediate world, what he called the intermediate state. He described this as the realm where the human soul enters immediately after death, before proceeding onward to heaven or hell. According to him, the intermediate world acts as a buffer zone between two realms, a place where souls have time to let go of earthly attachments and where their true nature is gradually revealed. Swedenborg emphasized that in this state, all the disguises and masks that people construct during their lifetimes are slowly stripped away, exposing the soul's most authentic inner essence. One of Swedenborg's most notable ideas is that judgment does not occur as a traditional image of a metaphysical court where God judges each soul. Instead, the soul itself, through experiences and self-confrontation in the intermediate world, reveals and chooses its own path forward. Swedenborg stressed that what we do during our lives becomes the determining factor for the future of our souls. For him, the soul is eternal, and its shape, emotions, or the atmosphere surrounding a spiritual being after death perfectly reflect the inner world that person cultivated in life. Swedenborg also put forth a concept that today remains familiar to many. The outer form arises from the inner mind. He described how the outward appearance of the soul is no longer fixed as it is in earthly life, but instead changes to mirror each person's inner character. A person who once had a beautiful exterior but harbored anger, selfishness, or deceit within would, after death, gradually reveal themselves as a darkened spirit. Conversely, those who possess kindness and compassion, even if their earthly appearance was ordinary, would see their souls become pure, perhaps even more beautiful than any earthly body could. Swedenborg's ideas go beyond theory to offer a deeply humane approach to the story of life and death. For him, heaven is not merely a reward, nor is hell simply a punishment. Both are the natural consequences of the development of one's inner being and the direct result of the lifestyle each person chose while living in the material world. Such perspectives not only left a profound impact on Western philosophy and theology, but also compelled many to reflect on the true meaning of every moment in life, as well as the responsibility each person holds for the destiny of their own soul. While in the West the spiritual world is often described through images of an intermediate realm and inner judgment, in Eastern traditions, especially Tibetan Buddhism, the concept of the in-between state, known as Bardo, has existed and been explained in profound detail for centuries. One of the most important works on this subject is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, commonly referred to as the guidebook for the deceased. The Book of the Dead is a collection of prayers, rituals, and spiritual instructions recited by Tibetan monks for the recently deceased with the purpose of guiding the soul through the transitional period after death until rebirth. According to Tibetan Buddhist teachings, after the body ceases to function, the soul will undergo a Bardo process lasting 49 days. This is a special period when the soul no longer belongs to this world but has not yet entered its next existence. During this time, the soul will experience various states of consciousness and encounter strange phenomena such as radiant lights, visions of deities and Buddhas, and vividly real scenes of heavenly or hellish realms. The most important point emphasized by the Book of the Dead is that all phenomena appearing during this stage are manifestations of the soul's own consciousness and karmic force. Nothing from outside is imposed upon the soul. Everything the soul sees and feels is a direct reflection of the actions it has cultivated during its lifetime. In particular, the Tibetan Book of the Dead views the Bardo not merely as a period of waiting, but as the final opportunity for enlightenment for every being. If during these 49 days the soul recognizes the true nature of these phenomena, it can overcome fear and attain liberation from the cycle of rebirth, achieving absolute freedom. Conversely, if the soul continues to cling to old emotions after the Bardo period, it will be drawn back into the cycle of reincarnation and enter a new life in accordance with its own karma. For this reason, in Tibetan tradition, it is believed that reciting the Book of the Dead is absolutely essential. It is a crucial moment when both the living and the deceased can contribute to shaping the future. Looking back, it becomes clear that the Eastern concept of the Bardo and the Western notion of an intermediate world, though different in language and symbolism, share a common understanding: that life and death are merely two stages in the endless journey of consciousness. After all the journeys returning from the boundary between life and death, there is one thing that both researchers and those who have personally undergone near-death experiences can easily agree upon. These experiences profoundly change the way people view life itself. Most individuals who have died and come back no longer feel the same fear of death as before. For them, death is no longer the end of all hope, but simply a door opening onto a new journey. Upon returning, many people suddenly find a new motivation to live more positively and generously with those around them. They say that it was the moment of reviewing their entire lives that made them understand the true value of every action, even every fleeting thought, crossed their minds. They realize that helping others, living kindly, forgiving, and being grateful are more important than anything else one can achieve in life. Many begin to seek meaning in the simplest things: spending time with family, caring for the vulnerable, or simply living each day fully and taking responsibility for themselves. They often share their stories not for attention, but out of a desire to remind others that the life to come depends greatly on the way we choose to live today. This philosophy of living does not stop at theory. For them, kindness is no longer just a choice, but becomes a necessity. They understand that the journey of the soul does not end when one closes their eyes for the last time, but continues in another form, where everything one has ever done, thought, or felt will accompany them to the other side. For this reason, many have chosen to forgive the past, to heal old wounds, so that they may continue living more lightly. They live with a simple yet powerful faith. Death is not a tragedy, but a transformation. And each day that we are still present in this world is another opportunity for us to cultivate happiness for ourselves and for others. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this journey. If today's story has given you new perspectives on life and death, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can continue to join us in exploring the unresolved mysteries of humanity. Goodbye, and we look forward to seeing you in the next videos.